Okay. Okay. All right. So we're done. All right. So once again, thanks a lot for coming. This is the Abby IMANI Reviews show. This is where we speak, we are real so that we can live. And before we proceed, I'd like us to say a word of prayer. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you so much for another session, another time in your presence. We commit everything into your hands. We know that you've already laid it out as far as you're concerned. This has happened already. So guide us, speak to us, show us what you have in store. And let this be a blessed time, a time of learning and a time of fellowship, a time of enlightenment. We pray for our guest that you speak through him to us. That at the end of the session, we will leave this place better people. We pray for those who are yet to join that you remind them and bring them to join us quickly. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so today we have as our guest Mr. Eric Nsarkoh. I'll read a bit about him, but we'll allow him to also tell us about himself and then we'll go on. So Eric is the head of the Stanbic Ghana Limited engineering team. He oversees the digital strategy of the bank and has responsibilities that span partnerships and technology, among others. Prior to this, he served as the head of sales and distribution at MTN Ghana. He led the process of creating today's mobile money ecosystem and growing usage from marginal levels to the pervasive levels that are evident today. He has worked across management consulting, manufacturing, and academia. He holds a BSc honors in chemical engineering and an MBA. He has 2 daughters. Wow, there's so much that Eric you've done, and I'm looking forward to hearing all these things and explaining to us some of these things. They're new to me, I'm sure to others as well. So, but before then, I'd like to remind us, let's go to the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and also share it with your friends and loved ones so that they can join in our conversation. All right, so usually we'll allow our guests to speak and then we'll have a Q&A. But as we do sometimes, if there are questions which are pressing, we can ask, or if he says something that we need immediate explanation, we can always ask and then we'll go on. So Eric, thank you so much for coming once again. And I'd like you to start off by
You're most welcome.
telling us about yourself, growing up, your aspirations, how you are where you are now. Yeah. So take us away.
Okay. So that's always a difficult question because of the last part, how you are where you are, because we don't even know where we are most of the time. But,
oh, really?
I pretty much have the same identity that I've had from, my infancy, that I identify mostly as the son of, and the youngest son of the late Nsarkoh and Abna Joanna Nsarkoh.
Okay.
And we lived in the quieter streets of Legon, Little Legon, for all my formative years. Okay. That's where I made some of the best friends I've ever had. And I'm still in touch with them. Actually, before I came here, I was on a forum of the Legon residents from 1960s, 70s, 80s, a reunion on Zoom.
Wow, 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, I mean, Enyonam, I tried to get Enyonam to join, but I don't know if she joined. But I pretty much cherish those bonds the most. And the rest, hopefully, I mean, I attended Achimota tech, did an MBA, etc. That will come up. But I think the most important identity is that I grew up in the campus of the University of Ghana, and it formed a major bedrock in who I became.
Okay. Can you speak a bit more to that? What do you mean by it formed a major bedrock? What are some of the things that you think informed that?
Well, Legon was coming out. So
I've heard about you guys.
Yeah, in the church we attend today, where you and I fellowship, is where we have been since it was founded. And it's the parents on the street were the parents of all the children. Even your bicycle, you rode it a bit, and then somebody also rode it for some time. So if a snake attacked somebody's chickens, it was the responsibility of all the teenagers to kill the snake.
Kill the snake.
So it was, and that was the end of Accra in those days. Like, it was, I call it the first gated community.
Okay.
So in those days, when you said you lived in Legon, people say, hey, then you need to leave early from the function you are at. But we never let it hold us back. I mean, I used to roam Accra like nobody's business.
Oh, okay.
And Abraka to Zongo, everywhere.
I see. Because the usual story I hear is those in Legon seem to live in a bubble. Like, everything happened there for them. So they aren't really aware of what was going on in the rest of the world.
Yeah, but not so with me. I had big brothers. I had good friends. I knew my way around this capital. So today I might be able to show you a few bus stops you don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if they are still there, to be honest, but I knew the ins and outs of Tema Station, Circle, the Dankwa Circle area. I knew where to get which trotro. And it was it has helped me, at the end of the day. I think the encounters of our infancy, the encounters of our youth are not different from the challenges of our adulthood. And I've been happy to leverage all of that, as we've gone along. I see on the list of guests my brother Ibrahim Osmanu. Okay. I hope it's the same Ibrahim I'm thinking about, because I have a friend called Ibrahim Musa. I don't know whether he's now using Osman, but
Ibrahim, are you the one?
Yes, I'm the one, boss Eric. Your friend from finance.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to hear you on the call.
Absolutely, because guys like Ibrahim, these were the kind of guys who made it possible for us to thrive in telecommunications. And he's the one who told me that he will not do accounts receivable as a chartered accountant, because that's not where the future of the world is going. So, people like that, they kind of allowed us to bring the best out of ourselves. And, they are the ones that we thank for everything.
That's good to know. We thank God too. So, how is it like going up from Achimota into university, in terms of what you thought of your future, your career, family? What were your expectations?
So, Achimota is one of the most complex institutions I've ever encountered.
Really?
I've encountered many.
How so?
I used to say in those days that as a male student of Achimota, there was more emphasis on perception than on reality. So there were some categories of dominance. Those who had very close fellowship with the female students were considered dominant.
Okay.
Those who were very physically masculine and able to take on fights were also considered as major icons. Then the very rebellious who could take on authority and argue their way through.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was also the people who were considered to have some kind of financial blessings.
Mm.
I don't refer to the females in this case. I refer to the males.
Okay.
But the most important category of Achimota was those who operated in wisdom, so that you could be perceived as belonging to the four, but you did not have to be in the four.
Okay.
And Achimota, I think,
that's
could only be navigated. Yeah, I think to some extent, I could argue that I was not defeated in Achimota, right? But okay. I feel like a few people were, and the scars are there to show.
Mm.
So it's quite a, it was the institution of our day. You get it. Like Achimota was the premium school in those days.
Yeah.
But maybe not anymore. I didn't take my children to Achimota, but that has the dynamics of the public education system to explain why we are getting through the difficulties we are in now. Because many people left Achimota for Ivy League schools, for big institutions across the world, and also for, less high-profile stuff. But I feel as if the public education system has been experimented with a bit too much.
Yeah.
And today we don't know the identity we are getting. So it's difficult to make decisions based on what we know.
Yeah.
And some of those things are reflections that we have to have as a people, as a society, to find out why we are doing that to ourselves. Were you in Achimota too?
Yes, I was.
Which house were you in?
Clark.
Okay. I will not say anything.
Oh, you say it. Go ahead. I was scared.
No, it's all right. I hope I see you at church sometime. We talk about Clark House. But
what I've heard is it's always been the ladies, the calm one.
You are the one saying,
Oh, it's true.
You are the one doing the speaking right now.
I'm blowing my mind. Okay,
I'll tell you.
I'll wait for your comments.
Comments will come someday.
Yeah. But it's true what you're saying. I mean, the way the educational system is right now, I mean, it will take a lot for the institutions to stand out properly. Like you said, have a proper identity. And if the effort is not put in, things will deteriorate. We're hoping that doesn't happen. Okay, so which house were you in? Let me also ask.
As far as I'm concerned, there's only one house in Achimota School.
Which one, Jibek?
It's yellow. Livingston.
Oh, okay. Well, me too. I won't say anything for now.
Let me tell you something about Livingston House. Okay. Every school alumni group is structured around the year group when you finished. But Livingston is the only alumni group where we are together from 1972 to 1995 or something.
Okay.
On the same WhatsApp group, and we organize events and so on. And so it's the only one. That's not happened before in the history of secondary education in Ghana. So as for us, we don't, tell our story at all. Our story tells us. And we are very well known. Before COVID, every Friday, we were at Buka restaurant or somewhere doing something.
I see.
So it's a very powerful, and you don't join that alumni group by the fact that you attended Livingston House. We have to see you physically.
Okay.
And screen you at one of the events.
Wow.
We've given scholarships to students. We invite them to events. One of them is in 5th year medical school.
Oh wow!
It's a big thing. So we don't belong to anything. We belong to
Yourself.
Livingston Alumni Group, and that's one. If you tempt me, I will change the interview to Livingston.
I'll choose not to do that. Next time when we meet, you can talk more about that.
Yeah. It's a big affair. A big affair.
Okay. All right. So from Achimota, you went to Tech, you said?
Yes. And Tech 2, I was in Katanga. So, me, I go with the places where it is bigger than the program. Because Katanga is bigger than the program. You know that.
I know.
I mean, look, let me explain something. The Katanga that we attended is not the Katanga that can set a lecturer's car on fire. You get it?
Okay. What's the difference?
30 years ago, I graduated from Katanga, and so this was basically coinciding with when Jerry Rawlings became a civilian ruler. Okay. So we studied under military rule.
Wow.
And it really dominated the focus of our studies because the military were people who you get into confrontation with, you have to be creative. In the military, they don't have procedure for arrest and bail and detention.
No.
So if you provoke a soldier, it means you want to die.
Yeah.
So we had to get our way without dying.
So how did that affect your studies?
No, so, those are the principles of warfare globally. At the end of the day, the Aztec warriors did not expand by fighting only, they fought. But where the king's daughter will marry the enemy's son, and then they compromise some defenses somewhere, then they betray somebody, then things happen. And we and the military, by all means, one day I'll tell you a story. One day the police attacked us with tear gas. And then the wind changed direction. So the tear gas went onto them. Yeah. But immediately we ran with buckets to fetch water for them, to wash their faces. So you think after they will fire at us, they will never fire again. They saw that we had outwitted them.
Why did they won their hearts? Were you demonstrating?
Sorry?
Were you demonstrating? Is that why they fired the tear gas?
If you want us to run our mouth, we'll run it too. Because that demonstration, 1992, Aluta, that's the reason you have private hostels today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we came to university and then we found that in fact, somebody has joined the chat. He's called Intim. He was there in Katanga too. Okay. And when we reopened, we realized that the people didn't have rooms the first years. And we went on strike. We took over the vice chancellor's guest house and we gave it to the students.
Wow.
And then, in the deep of the night, they went and drove the students away. And then we entered the lecture boycott. So for the first half of 1992, we didn't go to school. And that's when they started to build frantically to try to arrive at some kind of a compromise with us. So when you see some of us staying away from the national political discourse, it's because we saw people in those days who betrayed the student movement, who today are trying to become national leaders. So, in fact, we know all of them on both sides of the political divide. So we will stay away, because we saw them. They say the true measure of a man is not where he stands in times of comfort and convenience. That's Luther King, I think. But in times of challenge and controversy.
Yeah.
So we saw it. There's nothing more educational than the ability to fight a stronger enemy with methods that are non-violent. So, yeah, the story of Katanga is a whole we are building the chapters gradually.
Mm.
I hope I'm not making it difficult for you by not sequencing things properly. But
No, it's fine. I mean, I'm sure at the end of the day, everything will be woven nicely.
yeah, but Katanga was a nice place.
Okay. So what program did you do?
So me, I studied chemical engineering
Okay.
in tech, but later on I went to University of Ghana and I signed on to MBA.
Okay.
But I started very young. Immediately I finished national service. And after the national service, I started with MBA management science option. But I didn't like it. So I went to the coordinator to tell him that I just want to stop the whole thing because if I have a job at Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. So I'll just do the job till he can find me a better option.
Oh, really?
That's when he told me that I can try management information systems. But the option had not started. He said, it means that you'll be the only student. There's no contract. We don't know who will teach you in second year because you're supposed to go to Belgium, but there's no contract. The European Union has to pay. And I said, put me there. Because as for the management science, I'm not going to do it. So, Ghana, when you put your name, a few other people also put.
Okay.
So, but eventually we were 5 instead of 10.
So you're truly living like an Akura pace setter.
But I wish you had said like a Livingston guy. People like taking credit for courage.
But isn't Livingston in Motown? I mean,
but Katanga too is in tech, but we are bigger than tech.
Yeah.
We are very proud of our brand, our identity. It's Abigail, I'm not troublesome.
Oh, I haven't said anything. You're
I'm just preempting any further comments. So,
you talked about your life in Legon and how you're going out and going places. I was going to ask you that. So, would you consider yourself one of those popular people? Not in a very negative sense, but you know what I mean. Like,
no, Kana free.
All over the place.
No, I mean, I look, I lived my teen years in a socially cohesive environment. I went around. My friends saw me during school, after school. And I think, yeah, if that is Kobolo there, then we were Kobolo. But I think it was not Kobolo. No, I think we used to make our lives fun. Yeah. Today I bring my daughter's children, my daughter's friends here. And she or I drop her sometimes at her friend's place. And it's a different society. They have Uber, they have a few other things which we didn't have.
Yeah.
But we found our way. And I think it was socially beneficial to this day. My networks have been very much a part of who I have become.
And I think that also makes you more confident and gives you some sort of independence.
Yeah, I think wherever you go, when you open the door and you see a familiar face, it diffuses any tension, and I think that's pretty much how I've played it, I've tried to diffuse tensions using the history of what I knew, what I was, and it has worked.
All right, so back to MBA. So you did.
So I did MIS.
Okay.
And we went to Belgium for the second year.
Okay.
And then we became the first batch of MIS.
Okay.
And I started from Pricewaterhouse, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers, I think.
Yes.
But at that time, it was Pricewaterhouse Associates.
Okay.
And it worked out. We did budget and public expenditure monitoring system for the Ministry of Finance.
Okay. Wow,
Project itself, I'm not too proud of that project.
No.
Because me, when I go on a project, I want it to go live.
Okay.
But when it goes into brainstorming sessions for years, then I don't think. But anyway, I left them after 6 months. But I didn't think the project was going anywhere. So
it wasn't implemented at all.
Well, maybe one day they implemented it, but it was not within time, budget, and scope and quality, which are the marks of a successful project. So I left Pricewaterhouse. And then I went to KPMG.
Okay.
Some of the guys you see on the chat are from there. Daniel Jampo is from there.
Okay.
He's also, from Achimota School, but
I see.
So went to KPMG. KPMG was where I was trained. We had a boss called Yoku Kosa.
Okay.
And he trained us. He trained me, he trained Kojon team, he trained Daniel Jampo, Even the Kumaga on the chat, I don't know if that is Delali or his brother.
Hey,
but if it's Delali.
That's Delali.
Then if it's Delali, then means Yoku trained him.
Yes, it's me.
So we are one army. You see, for 4 of them to be here, it tells you that the army is strong. And we left KPMG to British American Tobacco.
Okay.
And tobacco was also a different kind of foundation. That was where I would probably say I got into hands-on IT. Because I did management information systems, I was a bit more methodology driven, implementation driven. But in tobacco, we became, hands-on as well.
Okay.
And but the thing is that the story of my life is that I've never been too long anywhere. Pricewaterhouse 6 months, 7 months, KPMG 15 months, British American Tobacco 18 months.
And they all for the same reason or different dynamics in each place?
Well, management information systems, my professor in Belgium told me that we are not going to be long anywhere. And when I was leaving KPMG, Yoku Kosa told me, he said, you'll be a consultant all your life because consultants enter and they depart. The ability to close a project is greater than the ability to open it. So I was very sure that, we were just living what the methodology said we'll live. And, one day when I became a software engineering teacher, I told the students as well. So nothing strange, no, mishaps, no regrets. It was just what it became. But have you been to Takrady before?
No, it's actually the one place I'm looking to go to. I've heard so much about it. It's interesting.
Abigail, are you one of those Legon people who don't go anywhere?
No. I've been to a few places, but funny enough, not at Takrady yet. I'm really looking forward to it. Anyone will tell you.
I see. Because in the tobacco days, I lived in Takrady briefly.
Okay.
And that was quite interesting, But I didn't like living there.
Why?
Look, let me tell you, Takrady is a small town.
Okay.
And a lot of people give Takrady a lot of credit for having big companies like BAT, the ports and harbors, flour mills, Gassem and so on there. But what I was finding gradually was that you had to make a decision to integrate.
Okay.
Takadi is not a place somebody will come and ask you for your, in those days, sorry, now I don't know, but this is 1998, 99. It was not a place where somebody would come and fleece you of your money, come with some Sakawa scheme to come and bother you and so on and so forth. But you had to integrate and love fun, because it was a place where people loved fun. The local environment had a lot of fun. But now if you were well integrated in Takadi, you might spend your whole life there.
I see.
So at the age of 28, 29, I had to be very cautious, because I felt the economy was going to be limited there. But at the same time, the only way to enjoy it was to go to, you know, what did they call that hotel by that time? Westline Hotel. Friday night, go and listen to Western Diamonds. Okay. Saturday night, go to Ahimfie nightclub.
Hey.
You know, we had some Monkey Hill place where you go and have some good food. Go to Harlem restaurant. You know, I did what I needed to do to know Takadi, right? Okay. But I just decided that no, if I get locked into this place, next thing you know, 40 years, you're still there.
But would that be a bad thing?
And the economy was small. So I asked myself, if I stay in this place, and that's when you start going to HR to ask why they not promoted you. You know, all my life, I've never been promoted in one organization.
Yeah.
I moved up by moving sideways. So, you know, I was set up for an unconventional career from day one. And I wanted to keep it that way, you know, because once they tell you in the classroom that this is the kind of life you're going to have, and then you keep it that way. And British American Tobacco was a great training ground. I mean, the late Jimmy Aronogdi was one of the best chief executives that I've ever encountered in my career. And, you know, even when I had resigned from the business and I was just serving out my notice, he was still exposing me to big workshops in Abidjan, in London, in whatever, because he said, you are the one who can do the job, just do it. You know? So the good thing about management information systems is it propelled me quite fast.
Okay.
You know, and you know, as a result of that, we got into in fact, the reason I left British American Tobacco was not that I was tired of Takadi, but I got an offer as Chief Information Officer of Ghana Breweries, which was owned by Heineken.
Okay.
And at the age of 29, I thought that was quite a good growth opportunity. So that's how I left BAT and went to Ghana Breweries. And then Ghana Breweries later on agreed to my expatriation to Heineken in Amsterdam.
Oh.
You know, because I say that because I went to Amsterdam and initiated the expatriation from there. Okay. A lot of these Ghanaian companies, they want you to stay for 25 years and then they'll give you a handshake and say, okay, now we can expose you to the colonial side of the business. But I went on a meeting there. I met the chief information officer of the group. I told my story. He said, I want you to come to Amsterdam. And then I came here and had to battle it out because Ghana, there we don't release our kind for European opportunities too early.
Yeah.
So it worked out. You know, Ghana Breweries, also worked out. You know, I went to Amsterdam for 5 years.
Okay.
And the Netherlands is a very difficult country.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very difficult country to live in, but I made it work by God's grace. Yeah, I mean, you see, Netherlands society is known globally as open. And it's normally assessed by the existence of legal prostitution, euthanasia, soft policy on drugs.
Right.
Yeah, but those things are just surface level, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when you get into the society itself, to move out of the African zone into the native Dutch zone, I was only lucky because I was a Heineken expatriate, so Heineken was paying for my housing and so on and so forth. But if you want to do it through the system, don't forget that the Netherlands designed South Africa, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you go into the, the Boer Wars with the English and so on, you see that Afrikaners, when you hear the language Afrikaans, I mean, you can pick up the Dutch words.
That's true. Now that you say.
Yeah. So it's quite a difficult society, but we made it work somehow. Whatever situation we find ourselves in, we try to make it work because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
So you want me to go on with the career? That one is a long one.
Oh, well, you can summarize it because we want to hear some of the things I want you to explain them for us. Let me see. Okay, so from Netherlands, then you came back to Ghana.
So from Netherlands, the same KPMG that has looked after all of us, I called them that I wanted to come. I called Rosemary Natui at that time. And she told me that President Kufuor was setting up a team under Mary Chinwihesi, who was chief advisor. And that team would be responsible for monitoring his 21 priorities.
Okay.
So we came and we worked there. And I won also 6 months, I resigned. But you see, normally when I say I've resigned, it means we've put the system in place.
Finished the project.
We've trained the people. We've built a talent pipeline. And we've got innovation going. When those 4 things happen, the job becomes mundane and political.
Yeah.
So of all these many employers I talk about in assignments, for most of them, we did those things. So, yeah, I mean.
I was just about to ask how you handle the politics. It looks like you dodged the bullet.
Hey, as for politics, if you don't dodge the bullet, it will take you down.
I know.
So we managed to. Mary Chinwihesi was a very powerful person in the presidency of Kufuor. So if you were able to use her cover, you would be fine. And that's exactly what we did. We were able to live under her, exactly. But, when I left that place, I saw a newspaper advert which said, they were looking for a general manager for a company called Discoverytel, which was an internet service provider. So, I mean, I saw it. I mean, I knew that it was a CEO role because the principals were in the United States.
Okay.
But I went there and in a very short space of time, we put in place those 4 components I'm talking about. But the ethics of the business were very far, departed from where I stood ethically. So after the 3rd month or so, I gave them notice, and then I went into telecoms.
Okay.
So in fact, Discoverytel itself, you could call telecoms, but it was an internet service provider. But I went to Tigo. So I went to a mobile network operator.
Discoverytel.
Yeah, it's no longer there. The thing about business is that if you don't take the ethics into account, you might not be there for a long time. So this was basically one of those businesses which did not take the ethics into account. And I went to Tigo, and that was the beginning of the beginning.
Okay.
Mobile network operator, that's, my native habitat.
Okay.
It's a business I've come to understand very well. And I think Tigo was one of the best runs I've ever had.
Okay.
I trained a team that is now very powerful across banking, across telecoms, and it's been a major reflection of my career as to what we were able to achieve in an environment like, I used to call Tigo the industry's maddest employer in those days.
Okay.
I can get away with that now because they don't exist anymore. I'm not talking about Airtel Tigo. I'm talking about Tigo.
Why did you
But
call
sorry.
Why did you call them that?
When we went to Tigo, every day you hear they've sacked somebody. I mean, not necessarily every day, but
Very often.
Very often. And I could not understand what was going on because there was like, let's call it a European shareholder, the Kenevich Group, but they had Latin American management.
Okay.
And they basically ran an environment where the Ghanaians were, to some extent, not as secure in their roles. But I mean, when I came, Tigo was probably, I don't know the tally at that time, but it was probably like my number 7 or number 8 employer or something. So I was, I was working in a different mode, So I think that at a certain point, the problems that we solved in Millicom Ghana, the group could not solve. So big auditors, everybody was looking to Ghana for the solution. Okay. But like I said, I trained the team. We had got the innovation going. The systems were stable, and the talent pipeline was in flight. So I didn't want to overstay,
Yeah.
But I think that is the only employer you could say, as of the day I was leaving, I was walking out because of frustration, because I think I had done everything I could do. And the environment was just piling more and more crisis in my direction. And I thought, I've had it. I'm out of here. So I went home, actually, that day without a job. But I had a mortgage running and I had school fees running. So I don't encourage young people to make decisions like the ones I made. But,
wow. Like you sound like the kind of person who knows what he wants and he goes for it. I mean, far.
I'm just a special creature in God's grace.
Well,
yeah, it was a rough decision. But when I left here, out of that, I went and volunteered at Professor Clement Jidonu's university, and I taught software engineering, I taught software process and methods, software testing, software requirements engineering. So basically, I became a software engineer because I taught the whole program.
Which university is that?
So that was Accra Institute of Technology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I think it was one of the greatest learning curves that I navigated, A few months of doing that, I was ready to apply to GIMPA and Ashesi.
Okay. So
from August 2010, I was teaching full-time at GIMPA and part-time at Ashesi.
So when you volunteered at the African Institute of Technology, you weren't being paid?
If I tell you how much I made in 6 months, you might break out weeping. I think it was like, that's why I call it volunteer, because, if I remember right, I think every course was $400 or something. Anyway, I guess this is confidential information for an institution, but at the time, for me, it was volunteering, to be honest. There was, we teach a semester for 3 months, 4 months, and you get paid what people get paid in weeks. Yeah, but it built me up. And I don't know how. Well, I don't know. I don't like people saying I don't know how I survived. I don't know how I survived. But Tigo had paid me some provident fund.
Okay.
So I used that to service my mortgage and my school fees.
I was about to
And
ask.
yeah, and that time, I think, I don't know if my family allows me to talk about all that, but when my mother died, she left me some shares in Standard Chartered.
Okay.
So I sold it. And
Desperate times.
desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah. Wow.
So by the time Gimpa started paying me, I was kind of steady. But I learned a lot teaching e-commerce at Gimpa, teaching software engineering at Ashesi, and so on and so forth, and doing some research. I learned a lot. The year 2010 became a very fulfilling year. It was also the year that my 2-year-old daughter at the time started school. So I was available. And she went to school at first. She said she would not eat. Some of those things are bigger crises than we know. So
I know. Seriously.
then they call you to say, Charlie, today they're serious. You have to come to the school. Eventually, we got back. The struggle is not done yet.
Oh yeah, this world there. There are stages and seasons.
I tell you no lie.
Challenges.
Tell you no lie.
So how was Ashesi like? Recently I met a lady from Ashesi. She actually, yeah, okay, for privacy's sake, I'll not say much, but she told me a bit about how students are admitted, or how do I say it? How you identify your students. And I think it's really impressive. The fact that, most of the time when you think of Ashesi, you're thinking of these Dadabi children, rich kids who have a silver spoon in their mouth. But
Yeah.
indeed, that they also admit needy children, and they do really well. And I was really impressed. One of these days, I'm hoping to be able to talk to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the provost of Ashesi is one of my mentors.
Okay.
Angela Uswansa, and I think they do a great job.
Yeah.
And what you talk about, I think, is the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship.
Yes.
They've won big endowments for their school. Ashesi is a serious place. It's
It really is.
yeah.
Maybe we can have a lot
I
more.
enjoyed it. I think I learned a lot from them. The application of the liberal arts sport to their education is quite impressive. And I think if we had a few more institutions like that in Ghana, I'm hearing good things about what is happening at Academic City as well.
Oh, okay.
Lancaster University. There are a few things happening in the landscape.
Okay.
We hope that we can refocus our energies on training a dynamic youth corps, which goes beyond sloganeering, goes into critical reasoning.
Yes.
With a digital focus as well. That's also good. Yeah.
There's hope for Ghana after all. This is good to know. I didn't know about what Academic City is doing, neither Lancaster. So it's good to know. I've seen, I've driven past the place a few times.
Yeah.
Hearing this.
I mean, I know that for those of you in the public health area, when we cannot find BCG vaccines and we are sitting here talking about artificial intelligence, you sometimes want to throw something at our heads. But, this morning I spoke to Na. She was on the call earlier. I think she's off now. But when she was speaking, I tell you what, I mean, my country people will say, because if we cannot find BCG vaccines, I mean, I remember when my children were being vaccinated with these things, You yourself, the parent, you are scared when the child is born until they get their BCG and they get their, usual stuff, measles and so on. And now here you are sitting around, and as a society, we cannot inoculate children. What are we really doing, And at this stage, we have to work hard.
Yeah. I mean, today, me and a few friends, I don't want to mention them, I get in trouble. We're ranting about this country. We're like, at this point.
Don't run away, don't run away.
Oh, don't worry. We're here. But seriously, I mean, the way things are going, it will take God.
You see, the thing is that I always give the example that when I worked in the Netherlands, the country, the Netherlands, was branded on the basis of Philips of Eindhoven, Unilever, Shell, Heineken, ABN AMRO Bank, Rotterdam Harbor, Schiphol Airport. I didn't know who the Prime Minister of Holland was.
Okay.
Politicians were not important. This thing we are doing in Africa, making them important, is why they are taking our vaccines and selling them. Because at the end of the day, the republic is built on institutional capacity.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to hijack your show for propaganda, but, I think that the African inherent and native institutional capacity has not been harnessed. Recently, I was listening to a video of Asante speaking in Memphis, Tennessee, and this is what he was saying. That, so now you have tried 66 years. You've told yourself that your traditional states were not important. Your traditional culture was not important. Your heritage was not important. All you wanted to do was to form an ideology and go with that ideology. And now that you have not been able to do it, and you are always at, debt bailout and so on and so forth, why do you think you cannot create solutions? What is the break between yourself and creativity? Sir Francis Bacon says, ancient times were the youth of our times. We need to go back. Because the world started from antiquity. The Dark Ages led us into antiquity, which ushered in the early Middle Ages, the late Middle Ages. And you find that this whole thing we are pursuing right now is something that started at the era of the Enlightenment, 12th century thereabout, ushered in with later on the Renaissance and so on. Because there's a certain person called the European, and there's a certain person called the African. The European will say that his history of thinking is probably traced up to Socrates, right, and beyond. And, then Plato came, then Aristotle came, and then the era of the medieval period, the border it's between St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, because they were kind of then looking at the church and state. But, beyond that, when they go into the era of an Enlightenment philosophers, they will start from maybe René Descartes, who decided that he wants to question everything. That's why he came with the I think, therefore I am. But he was not the favorite person of David Hume, who came after him, right? Because, at that time, they were talking about different aspects of epistemology. So the senses that the likes of Hume and so on had were trying to look at the metaphysical world also in certain aspects that Descartes and co were not looking at. But these things were a bit shifted from our essence.
Yeah.
And the African philosophers, Redu and William Abraham and so on and so forth, have also spoken to the fact that, within the African ethnography, you have even words that when you pick up, the philosophy of the society. And these guys, are comparing that to saying that you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. Those kinds of statements. They're saying that's not philosophy, that's just idiomatic. But when we are talking about African society and we are talking about proverbs as the house of speech, as the Igbos say, it's not the same as you make an omelette without breaking eggs. You have to be African to understand some of the dynamics of the things that they are talking about. You can't alienate Africa from philosophy.
No.
because we had our own, you know. And it is that way of thinking that you have to see. When we came to, you know, MTN and so on, and it came to the basis on which we would do mobile money and all that. That's why I'm talking about these things, because at that point you have to examine the society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the unique features of that society are what you are tapping to be able to do something that is uniquely Ghanaian.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, a lot of the time we want to talk about, look, when you talk about Lee Kuan Yew and these kind of guys, you see, you know, the empress like Genghis Khan and those kind of Chinese dynasty people who, as a result of the understanding of the Chinese empire and the Oriental philosophies, they also built a world civilization.
Mm-hmm.
So those kinds of guys, Lee Kuan Yew and co are offshoots of that kind of society. So these are guys who were, you know, good friends of British prime ministers from Wilson and so from, I think he's called Harold Wilson or so, from Cambridge. So they used that to tap into the Western resources. Okay. But also they were giving free labor union services and so on in the Singapore environment to be able to get the independence from Malaysia, you know. Mm-hmm. So it is always at the nexus of two very different worlds that you get value. You know, that's why they say Steve Jobs them as Zen masters and so on and so forth. It's always at the point where they, you know, Steve Jobs, the Apple guy. Mm-hmm. See, those guys, they like transcendental meditation and, you know, the Zen mastery, you know. But it is at that point that you get value, where you marry the two worlds, maybe music and computer programming, those kind of things. But what we are trying to do right now, we are bastardizing the whole, you know, when you go and do research today and you want to ask the number of people who go to church and are females between the age of 35 and 45. See, my question will be, what are you trying to prove as a theoretical construct that will contribute to knowledge? Or are you just trying to get a promotion, right? Mm-hmm. Because yes, there's a lot of basic research going on in all institutions in the world, right? But my point is that the grounded theory has to be addressed. Because in all the disciplines of the world, you know, in science, Albert Einstein was delivering grounded theory. In philosophy, between Descartes and Hume, and later on, what do you call that guy, Hegel, and so on and so forth, they were, you know, also doing something. Kant before Hegel, you know, they were all doing something which was grounded. If you go to political science, you know, John Locke and Smith and so on, they were also doing something. But we want to do just a little efficiency tweak. I think somebody is unmuted or not.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
It's Kojo in team, but I think you have to mute from your end.
Somehow it's not. Yeah.
Kojo in team's mic is on.
Okay, I think it's gone now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those are the little things that I think if we addressed, I was hoping I will not get onto a topic that would make me too passionate and then start blocking the conversation from happening. But
it's all part of the conversation. I mean,
that particular one.
Again, we've been talking a lot about Ghana these days, and one of my friends, again, I'll mention the name, hosted one of the old theater shows, and it just brought back the fact that we are not authentic. And long and short, at the end of the day, we all agree that we sort of lost our identity. You know, we don't value our background, the good. Of course, it's not all good, but there's that good aspect that we can be proud of and base our identity on. but we think what's from out there is what's best for us, and it's made us lose ourselves, and that's exactly what you're saying right now. So it's
For me, I don't quarrel with our ability to adopt practices from other cultures. Like I'm not a purist when it comes to culture. I'm okay with wearing a kente shirt which has other fabrics, somewhere, and so on and so forth. But I think that the way we have allowed the narrative to form, as though we don't have our own political science, we don't have our own philosophy, we don't have, that kind of thing, is where our educational system needs to fix it. Because you don't want to train a generation that believes that they don't subscribe to certain disciplines. I think it should be a compliment to the African nature that we were able to learn the Western history and so on so quickly and discard it so quickly. Because today, if you look at the, scholarship that is going on in, there's this, is it Impim Menu or Menu Impim? Great African American scholars, Molefe Kete Asante and so on and so forth, who are writing some very good stuff that the governor of Florida is now very worried that African American history is becoming too powerful. And it is showing up some of the Western history for what it is. I mean, what is the history of Greek civilization? About Zeus being up there, creating Atlantis, and Apollos being in charge of the sun, and so on and so forth. We know that this is mythology.
Yeah.
The Aryan race, which Adolf Hitler based his whole torturous reign on, it is mythology. People who rode chariots into the hills of India and they looked white and so on. It's all mythology. So when you start to show it up for what it is, then people start to ask you big questions. That what was this thing based on? What was this whole superiority? What was it like? How did Africans become suddenly, second-class people? And Ethiopian philosophers, Zera Yacob, these people wrote more important things than what Kant and Co wrote. Because, the history of Africa is the history of the world. The Kingdom of Axum is where, the Queen of Sheba went and met King Solomon. And, that line, that's why they call Haile Selassie the 52nd descendant of King Solomon. So, we've created a society where only Rastafari understands even this thing I'm talking about, So, when I was in Achimota, my senior Sparks, he was Rastafari, and he understood. When you go on Facebook, you see his name is Eko Axum.
Eko Axum.
Yeah, but the Kingdom of Axum is one of the greatest kingdoms of Africa. Somewhere around Sudan, thereabout, And it's important that we lace it into the narrative. Because, many civilizations trace their antecedents to Mesopotamia and so on and so forth. But if you do it properly, you can position your culture against intimidation by any Western civilization. And you begin to show that the West ain't all that. Like we worked there in 2002 to 2007. I took 12 projects live in Amsterdam, which I don't think that, even if I say so myself, I'm necessarily being arrogant. My daughter Nanaba doesn't like me to say I, she likes to say we. So projects which I did, I like to say we. But yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot to be derived from the work that is out there for us to do. But as we seek to achieve more, we have to build up that confidence. For me, that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah. Okay. Where were we?
We were at Tigo, at lecturing, I think.
Lecturing, I shall say, yeah, I shall say. Okay.
So, yeah, when I finished with the lecturing, I went to Airtel.
Okay.
It's was also 6 months, but we did the three things that I spoke about, the 3 or 4 things. And that was when MTN called me to say they wanted me to come over.
Okay.
And the rest is history, because MTN was where I spent 10 years. That was the first time I did something like that, right? So out of the 30 years since I left university, I spent 10 with MTN. I spent 5 in Heineken in the Netherlands. So it means that the other 15 years, I covered the other 14 employers.
Wow.
And, it was MTN was very productive. I mean, on average, almost every 6 months, we were doing something very big.
Okay.
Because we created the business solutions department, which was the corporate, the part that became the enterprise unit of MTN. So in the beginning, we put out dedicated internet services for internet service providers. We put out lease line services for banks and so on to interconnect their branches. We put out hosting services for mining companies to keep their servers with us. And most importantly, we fixed the MTN network, because those were the days when, the network just could not cope. Those used to call it most terrible network, all sorts of things. But we had to, compel the CEO to, support us and create what became the IP MPLS department of MTN, and then bring in the skills that were needed to, because data is different from voice, right? In those days, the thing was that we were trying to browse on the network, but we didn't have the skills to put the internet on the network. So, Andrew Aite Okobole came and created a team that stabilized the network. He was also in Legon. He lived in Legon.
Okay.
So it was a good period, but after that, they moved me to sales and distribution.
Okay.
The pillars of my time in sales and distributing were to eliminate the scratch card, to scale mobile money from the 200,000 agents that were doing it when I took over, 200,000 subscribers who were using it when I took over, to the 11.7 million that we handed over in April 2021. And then to put smartphones into Ghana, and then to change the telecom business from voice to non-voice. So to data, mobile money, digital apps, music, that kind of thing. So aside from those ones, the big assignment was to grow a talent pipeline where, we promoted probably maybe some 30 or so odd people into if they were in management already, into higher management, or if they were not into management, into lower management. And some of them went double or triple. But of course, the tail of the organization benefited from that. So by the time I was leaving there, we're doing partnerships with the Center for Social Policy Studies to look at the causal variables of mobile money, and to train the sales organization to the point where, the people we call canvassers, the commission salespeople, could also get an idea about what we were doing. So the work we did there, we are quite proud of. Right? But like all good things, one day I had to inform them that, I'm not a shareholder. Right? We always have those notional shares you can call shares, but I'm not part of the global elite that are the principals of these things. A multinational corporation is a very complicated vessel.
Mm.
You need to know when to jump on and when to jump off.
Mm.
And
Anything
the time
can
had
happen.
come for me to give them the baton.
Mm.
Then I moved to banking,
Yeah.
which is where you found me.
Ambi.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Banking is a very regulated industry worldwide. So, I mean, in fairness to my employer, whose permission I did not seek before I came and sat on your program, I cannot say too much, but it's not an industry that I have found inspiring because it's very regulated and innovation is very difficult to roll out. But in the circumstances that we find ourselves within those constraints, I think we've done a lot. But I think worldwide, if you ask any banker, they'll tell you after an exciting career in telecoms, manufacturing, retail, and so on and so forth, you're sometimes, asking for trouble if you want to close in banking on the same high. But sorry, I put my finger on the camera, but somebody was asking which category did I belong to, but I don't know what it means. His name is EK.
That's your friend.
Which of my friends?
The one we both know.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh yes, when
see.
you're talking about the different categories in Motown, that's when she asked the question.
I see. Hey, anyone wants to put me down? I see. No, that one I operated in wisdom, like I said.
Yeah.
And I moved into each of the categories as and when the occasion demanded. Yeah.
She's asking why I'm giving her up like that. So we're talking about Stanbic. So
yeah.
how are you coping?
Oh, maybe like a fish out of water. I sweat and I carry a towel around my neck. It's had I not been so used to jumping, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I don't know how I would have. I see Ibrahim is asking me how easy is banking, as a switch. But it is easy in that sense, like to be able to understand the ratios, net interest income, net interest revenue, stress testing, and so on and so forth. That is not the difficult part. But the culture is very different. And but like I said, I am a passenger of time. I don't. If you called me next year at the same time, nothing guarantees that I'll be with the same place. You get it. So it's a question of making it happen when you can. But if at some point the job is done, the most important thing is normally the longevity of the legacy. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to ensure. That as for making the system stable, getting disaster recovery testing, putting a talent partnership strategy in place, streamlining innovation, streamlining regulatory products, and so on. So those are the things that we focused on so far. And it has gone very well. I mean, on a more serious note, I think I could say that these years have been very productive years since I left. But when I left telecommunication, I put myself into 7 buckets. And every day I assess how we are doing on all 7.
How do you mean?
Well, when the IMF thing was happening, we did some simulation using the digital economy. And what I said was that look at the numbers. I'm an engineer. I like to look at the numbers. Right? Unfortunately, today I've been talking about things that I don't understand, like philosophy and history. But I'm an engineer. The basics are what I look at. The V equals U plus AT. So when I go back to the basics, MTN did 1.2 trillion Ghana cedis of mobile money transactions last year.
Okay.
But the year before, they did 938 billion. So at that time, I checked and they said that 5% of those transactions were payments to merchants. So I said, well, but if 5% are payments to merchants, then it means that for easy computation, if you take 938 billion as 1 trillion, then you did about 50 billion of payments to merchants. And when you do payments to merchants, you charge 0.2% as the revenue to MTN. So out of that, 50 billion, it means that 100 million was the revenue.
Okay.
And, in that payment to merchant space, there's no commission, there's no cost. So it's almost like your revenue is equal to your profit. But of course, you allocate some fixed costs over there, salaries of people and so on. So I said, okay, then tax revenue to government would normally be 25%, but you can make it 20 just to take care of some of those costs. But it means that there's 20 million cedis there. But when you go to the database of the Ghana Union of Traders Associations, they tell you that there's about 7.5 million merchants in Ghana, including the petty traders. So now with that 20 million cedis of revenue, if you take, instead of 7.5 million, you even take 5 million, that you can do 60% and put them on a platform, which is something I'll tell you because that's a separate bucket. So this one I'm talking about, first bucket, digital economy. So you put them on a platform which we've created, and we call it Brono.
Yeah.
So you've seen Brono, right?
You mentioned it.
Yeah. So the whole idea of Brono is, if I took this bottle of water, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but if I took the bottle of water and, you then put it into the Brono platform as I want this bottle of water, it will go to all those petty traders around here who sell the bottle of water, and they give you a price. And you choose which price you want, and then they deliver it to you.
Okay.
And, you take a little commission. Now, as in the Brono platform takes a little commission. But because this is e-commerce that speaks to the 3 most essential differentiators for the informal sector: the lack of listed prices, the secure payments, which are because you pay Brono on an escrow. You don't pay to the merchant. You pay to the app, and when you get the item, it releases to the merchant.
Okay.
And then the third one is obviously delivery, which crowdsources from the environment. So people can bring you stuff because they're around here. So as a result of that, you can get 5 million people to sign on. We work with the informal sector. That's how we were able to do mobile money. And if you are able to, I had, calls to present to some critical people in public sector, and I explained some of these points, that if you're able to do that, then it means that 20 million that you got, based on 200,000 merchants,
Okay.
to be able to scale it to 5 million merchants, it means you have multiplied 200,000 merchants, which is what MTN had, you've multiplied it by 25. So the 20 million also by 25 will give you 500 million. And then after that, you bear in mind that the revenue was 0.2%. So you can make it 1% because mobile money that is 1%. We put the 0.2 there because we were growing that sector at that time. So you make it 1%, And the 500 million immediately becomes 2.5 billion. And then you pass a law that the windfall must not go to the telecom company, must go to the government. And then so that's 80% that is left will then be added and become 10 billion. Then how much was the IMF giving you again? Because that's the 10 billion that you've got is almost, even after the city fell, is almost $1 billion. The IMF said they were giving you $1 billion every year for 3 years, but they've not brought it yet. So those were things that we put out there, and this was something that I gave to the Institute of Social Statistical and Economic Research to work on.
And what happened?
You forced me to be a musician. There's nothing I can do. But I still had that as one bucket. Then Bruno was another bucket. So I had 2 buckets out of 7 that I was trying to work on. So I'm just talking about beyond banking now. That when we were leaving MTN, we created what was called the Heritage app. Today is at the forefront of my mind in terms of the journey that Ghana must go on. Sometimes when we start talking about philosophy and so on and so forth, people forget that we are software engineers and we are MIS people and we are engineers and all that. Of course, we understand technology right to the point of neural computing and artificial intelligence and consciousness and so on and so forth. But we are trying to link it to our culture so that we can evolve this nation. Right? So the Heritage app was created on that basis, that whenever I went to the Wemefia's Palace or the Chief's, the Menshia Palace or so on, I felt the donations that corporates were making were insulting to the heritage of the place. So we should put them on an app where people can donate money, watch the festivals, Apesidae and so on and so forth, and experience the culture, virtual tourism. And this app, again, I don't know if it is scaling or not scaling. It was one of those ones. The system that we put in place for President Kufuor was one of the buckets as well. Because I built Anaba says no I. So we built the monitoring and evaluation system for the 21 priorities. And we tested it with the emergency power program. And that software is still available on my computer here. Kufuor's priorities were West Africa gas pipeline, health insurance, youth employment, president special initiatives, and so on and so forth. And every government has priorities that we can use that for. So I'm still quite eager to, lend some support to whoever wants to look at that. We also looked at the scaling of the financial sector, which is a big issue today. The distribution framework of, banks and financial institutions needs to be enhanced. And those are things that one day, we hope that we can get into an assignment because of our present constraints. And then, of course, we also looked at entrepreneurship ecosystems where we could get into partnership with the Ghana Digital Centers. And, at that time, we brought together Telecel, Ashesi University, because, the pyramid of Silicon Valley is the pyramid of development, right? At the apex of Silicon Valley is the Stanford University. And then at the base, you have the, incubators of Google in Mountain View and Facebook in Menlo Park and so on. And then you have the Sandhill Road where the money comes from. So we wanted to do the same thing here where we put MTN and Vodafone and so on in, one apex, and then we put Ashesi and so on in another apex. And then we bring the MasterCard Foundation and so on together to be able to form some kind of economy. And these things we've not given up, but it's very difficult in this environment. But the things I'm describing to you, if we did these 7 things, including the last one, which is to put up a training partnership where, a big bank, like maybe my employer or some other one would fund Microsoft and so on to pay faculty of universities to teach informal sector people digital skills and so on and so forth. If we put together those things, we have a developed country. And it will be landed on our heritage because we understand it. That's why I was talking about, the kingdom of Axum and so on and so forth. Because, you have to do these things. This is the this is the continent which started from, there's a Still Pulse song, which you like Still Pulse? No, Still Pulse is after your time. Before your time. But we used to have this reggae group. Okay. And then they would sing Egyptians, Phoenicians, and the Moors. Civilization, that's for sure. Creators of the alphabet. When they're talking about Egyptians, Phoenicians, and the Moors. The Phoenicians are like Lebanese, because the Moors also, they ruled the province of Iberia, right? And that's Spain, and so on and so forth. These are black guys. And Egyptians, we know Egyptians. But you have to link the modern science to the ancient science, right? Because the world is just going round, We are not necessarily evolving. Sorry?
There's nothing new under the sun, right?
There's nothing new. As for what you do, I would never understand it, right? Because it's like, how do you even become public health? Are you a doctor or what? It sounds very difficult,
It's amazing, but that's another story for another day.
I know that the things you people do, but that's the foundation of engineering. Life is all of engineering design now is talking about biomimicry. I looked at a video of a guy from MIT who programs his prosthetic leg, so that it's able, the stub of the flesh that is left, every day the leg's ability to understand the attempted movements improves. So now he's a mountain climber and an athlete and all sorts of things using a prosthetic leg. So, this is why I keep saying that, from the kingdoms of Babylon and so on and so forth, not too much has changed. We went through pre-modernity, we went through modernism, we went into postmodernism and so on and so forth. But you find that we are getting back into the considerations of the metaphysical. Because in the modernist era, nobody wanted to hear about the metaphysical, like the inability to explain. There's a guy called Michio Kaku, who's a great professor of physics. But he's able to explain where we want to go and how robots will do everything, and energy will be infinite and so on and so forth. But there's another guy on the panel that he was on who told him that, look, even a lizard, when you cut off the tail, it grows back, right? So don't try to predict the world, because humanity has not been able to do what a lizard is doing. And sometimes you have to realize that the trajectory of life will be ordered by the metaphysical at some point. And God himself is out there looking at what we are going to do. What do you gain when iPhone becomes thinner? At the end of the day, you've just compacted technology. Some patents will be issued, that's true. But this is not a pivot in science. But on the other side of it is that when you look at the civilizations, the Mesopotamian region is just the region between the Tigris and the Euphrates, right? And it is out of that region that Alexander the Great and so on went and conquered Greece and started to spread Greek civilization across. Today, somebody was telling me that democracies are hardly ever in war. And so maybe that is the reason that some of these societies that we have, of course, I mean, Boko Haram is in war, but maybe it's a special democracy. But you are taking that region, and then you see that even from the story of the Bible, that is where Noah's Ark and so on crashed or came to shore. And it is out of that you find that Ham was the son of Noah, Cush was the son of Ham, and the Cushites were in the Horn of Africa, right? And at the height of their empire, they conquered Egypt and all that. And the Nubian Empire and so on were all, subject to these guys at some point. But you find that out of those guys, they came to the West. Some of those guys came to the West. And you find that old Ghana, Ouagadougou, was also a beneficiary of that migration. So you see that my interests are many, right? But out of that, Ouagadougou came, when Sundiata Keita formed Mali, then Mali, the Malian Empire became the big one in the West. And then Mansa Musa and so on ruled that empire. Then they were conquered by Songhai. So Sunni Ali and so on and so forth, they also came from the Songhai side. But out of the conquest of the Songhai by the Moroccans, you find that some people migrated to present-day Ghana. And then the Gonja and so on arrived, because, the Guana spread everywhere, from Ifutu to Labadi. And out of this came a lot of empires, Denjra, Akwamu, and, these things are important because it is through that you begin to see the inferiority of the conquering civilization. When somebody conquers you in war, the person is not superior to you. Is the outcome of the Russia-Ukraine war going to tell who is superior by nature? It is not. These are also people who were, historically there as well. Europe has been cleared clean by Hitler. It has been cleared clean by Julius Caesar. It has been cleared by Napoleon. A lot of people have attacked and won. Does that make, one group is superior to the other? Or, it is all intermeshed. Some people were under a different name. One day they moved somewhere, they became the Vikings. These ones, they say the Prussia people became the Germans. It's all quite a mix. So we have to look at our history that way. And when we do, I think that our confidence will be restored in the fact that we are onto something that is also great. And our understanding of the sciences and our understanding of software engineering will also allow us to depict consciousness in the way that reflects Africa, based on the philosophical thinking of Africa. And when we take on those things, we know that then we have a destination that will reflect science and technology. Because you can't develop this country through cocoa and timber. I don't think that there's enough of that. I don't think that there's enough gold. Which river bodies are you going to pollute after the ones you've done already? You're going to need digitization, you're going to need energy, you're going to need healthcare. And once you solve some of those problems here, you're going to scale internationally. So again, I always worry when I'm going without a question. So let me stop.
So that's valuable information, and thanks for sharing that. All the things you said, all the proposals, I'm just wondering why they are not being taken up. But like you said, we'll wait.
We need a private sector. We need a private sector that is going to take up innovation. I mean, nowhere in the world does the government do this, right? And I think that my calling is what I speak to, right? And after we did mobile money, I started to speak a little more because I felt like now there's something to look at. And after we built Bruno, then I said, okay, then we are talking about also demonstrating that, the same, Visa is not as big as Amazon, right? So when we built a remittance system and then now we put a mobile commerce system on top of it, and then we're talking heritage app, then you're talking about Sony, Universal. I mean, this is the way the world goes. When you have all those industries and you have the tax revenue and so on, because we are doing something that has not been done before. You see, the West built on the back of the slave trade, they built on the back of colonialism, they built on the back of conquest. Today, there are a lot of treaties out there that democracies must not face each other in war. And it's not as if we even want to go and fight anybody. We don't have the means to go and fight somebody. So we are building with innovation from day one. But we are in familiar waters because this is how Africa has survived. And if we are going to go by, nothing should be taboo. The time when we used to say, the kind of resistance that the British faced in Angola, the kind of resistance they faced in the 100-year war with Ashanti, nothing should be taboo. We should be able to talk about these things without somebody saying, hey, because you are an Ashanti, because you are an Ewe, because you are no. If we are focusing on the united greatness of our heritage, there will be no problem. But no, I will not go and sit on a radio station with politicians talking about this because they'll trample on it, Yeah. And I think that if I did the same in, Empress of Rome, Caligula made his horse a consul, right? Politics has been a joke for a long time. So if you try to make things work with politics alone, then you get to a point where you are frustrated, and the politicians are also frustrated.
Yeah. Okay, our time is fast spent. I think a lot said. You shared a lot about yourself and about your contribution that you're making towards making Ghana a better place. And there's no better time than today, being to talk about these things. I'm hoping that it's not going to stay here. As we share this video, it's going to get to the right ear and go from the ear through to the hands. So thank you so much. Thank you. I wish we could talk some more. Ibrahim says thanks for the presentation. Yeah.
Ibrahim is a great guy. One day you should invite Ibrahim himself.
Okay. All noted. Yeah. I've learned so much.
But you owe me the explanation about public health. When I see you on Sunday, you have to tell me something.
Oh, I will. Definitely.
Okay.
All right. I would have. Okay, Dana Jampo says, I've enjoyed your journey, Eric.
Danny J, the interesting thing about me and him is that our daughters are also best friends.
Okay. That's
so nice. It's wonderful to see her. And Ebo and Amwa means, oh wow.
Great talk. A lot. Yeah, truly a lot to think about. Seriously. I think we should find another time to talk about this properly. We really need your mind for this country and even for ourselves. Elizabeth says, inspiring story. Yes.
Yeah, that's my brother-in-law.
Okay.
Hey, Adra.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll draw the curtain here. Once again, thank you. And thank you, everybody else, for coming. Like has been said, a lot to think about, a lot that has been learned. May God help us all. And I wanted to talk a bit about how faith has played a role, but if I start now, I don't think we'll finish. At another time.
Faith is everything. That sums it up for you.
Yeah. I mean, it can only be God that has
Absolutely.
all these times and brought you this far. We thank him. All right, so this has been the Abby IMANI Reveals show. This is where we speak, we are real so that we can live. Eric has been very real today, and we thank him for that. All right, yes, please pray with us, Eric, to close.
Okay. God, we thank you for this fellowship, and we thank you for the possibility for others to join and for the comments in the chat. We pray for the grace as today is Independence Day, Ghana, that some of the things that we speak of as an ambition will be fulfilled in our lifetimes by your grace. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. God bless our homeland, Ghana.
And make our nation great and strong.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good evening.
You too. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye-bye.
You can unmute yourselves to say bye or show your faces as you exit.
Bye to everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for coming, Ibrahim.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right.
Okay, bye.